How's it going, everyone? It's your boy FreeMadC2 and welcome back to another episode on my channel. In today's episode, I'm excited to announce that this will be the first episode into my 1993 Mazda RX-7 Restoration, and to kick it off, we'll be installing a Racing Beat Midpipe so we don't piss off any neighbors with a loud exhaust on future installs. This right here is a Racing Beat race pipe, part number 16222, that deletes your catalytic converter. It's flashing 3-inch pipings with a built-in pre-silencer and is fabricated with 304 stainless steel all around. This also deletes your air pump, so if you want to do this upgrade, I will show you how to do that later in this video. Before doing this install, warm up your muscles by jacking up your car to the appropriate height. First step to do is to remove the air pump piping that feeds air to your catalytic converter. By doing this, you unlock the cheat code for rotary fumes. As for mine, it was already disconnected and was feeding air to the atmosphere. The tools you'll be needing for this RNI is a ratchet, 10mm socket, and two 14mm wrenches. Here's a comparison between the MagnaFlow midpipe and the Racing Beat midpipe. I'm using painter's tape to protect the bottom of my new midpipe from getting scratched on install. This will not leave markings and is easy to remove later. Now it's time to install the new midpipe. It's the reverse order of when you removed it. Don't forget to have all new hardware and your tools next to you. And finally, start your car to check for any leaks. Before removing your air pump, make sure to get a block-off plate kit. I got mine from Bonsai Racing. You'll be using two block-off plates from the kit. Let me show you where these two go. Standing on the side of the car and follow the air pump to the back, one will be used on the side of the LIM where the air pump feeds, and one will be on the rear of the LIM where the air connects to the catalytic. Let's start removing our intercooler pipings in order to expose the air pump and pulleys. Don't forget to block the hole that goes to the turbo. You don't want anything to fall into there, unless you are trying to find an excuse to go single turbo. Next step is to loosen the bolts to the pulleys. You want to do it at this point while there is still tension from the belt. However, my bolts for the water pumps were being a pain in the ass, so I left it alone till later. To remove the first belt that controls the power steering and AC compressor, loosen the bolts from the tensioner pulley here. For the second belt, the alternator and air pump is the one that gives tension. First, start loosening the bolts on the alternator bracket. Right below the air pump is the bracket you want to remove. You will not be needing this, so you can remove it completely. Here's the moment you've been waiting for, and that is removing the air pump. Now when you are at a car meet and open your hood, you can now show your twins. It's so satisfying to see how much room that made. Time to start blocking the ports for the air pump. You'll need just a 10mm ratchet and wrench. Take time on this. It's a tight spot in the back to get to these bolts, especially if you have fat hands like me. This is the tight spot I was talking about. Thanks to video editing, you will never know how many times I dropped my ratchet down into the abyss. Once you have that pipe off, you can just drop it to the floor. If you are going to use the gaskets like I am, just make sure to inspect them or use a little bit of high temp silicone for a perfect seal. This is the first block-off plate you'll be using. And I'll be using the original nuts for the install. Bonsai does give bolts to use, but this is fine for me. For the second block-off plate, I had to make my own gasket. If yours is in good condition, just use that one. On to our last install of the day, the pulleys. Like I mentioned before, I had a hard time removing the bolts for the water pump, so I did it off camera. But I'll show you later the technique I used for the install. For the alternator pulley, just give it lots of love taps till it's in. That's what she said. As you can see, putting on the alternator belt was actually a challenge, so I had to improvise and remove the alternator bolt to get more leverage. With the alternator bolt removed, I used the breaker bar to move the alternator out of place in order for me to slip on the belt. Now it's time to tighten everything down. Make sure you are checking the slack on the belts. You don't want that to be super tight. Here's the technique I was talking about on how to tighten the water pump bolts. I wedge a breaker bar diagonally between two bolts while I tighten the others. Alright everyone, that wraps up the install. Let me put everything back together with a little movie magic. If you are new to my channel, I normally do an outro of every install I do, but there's not much to see here, and especially the mid-pipe being under the car, it's impossible for me to get a good shot of that. However, let me give you a before and after comparison of how much quieter this exhaust system setup is now.